In this video, we're going to be touching on what actually brings most of the customization to our theme, and that's template overriding. First, we're going to talk a little bit about what templates are and where we can find them, and then we're going to talk about how to override templates and what that means for our custom theme. One of the biggest advancements to come to Drupal 8 when it comes to custom theming is their move from using template.php files into something called twig files. Now, these twig files make it much easier to code custom templates for Drupal. There's a lot less confusing markup, and it's just easier to read and easier to write. So, what can we do with these twig files? Well, they're provided by several different methods, one of which is core. Drupal core provides twig files that allow us to access the layout of different things like blocks and pages. But then twig files are also provided by modules, such as the views module, which has twig files specifically associated with, say, a view layout that is rendering an unformatted list. So we can override these different templates, and we can use them to customize the display of our website. So let's do that a little bit here with a couple of very important twig files that we need to add to our fluffiness template. So we can access these twig files by coming into Drupal, Core, Themes, and we're going to come in here to the Stable folder. And then we're going to navigate into the Templates folder. And here we can see that we have a lot of different categories for the templates that we can override. For example, within the admin folder, we can see that there are a ton of twig files here that allow us to override, for example, the admin block.html. And if we open this up, we can see that it's simply just an HTML file with some very special markup code here that says, for example, if we're using the block.title, then let's go ahead and print that out into an H3. And then we'll end the if. If we don't use the block title, then this particular region doesn't appear. And we can see here some of the different programming formats that are being used. In Drupal 7, this would be a nice long PHP if statement, where we actually have to open up the PHP brackets and we have to write the conditional. And then we have to drill down into a large array of information just to find the block title. Well, within Twig, all we have to do is say if block.title, and then we're done. So Twig really makes it a lot easier to read and to write the code that makes up our themes. So what are we going to override? Well, let's head back over here into this folder, and we're going to back out into the templates folder. And we're just going to go into the layout folder. Now, within the layout folder, there are actually two of these that we're going to take. We're going to take the html.html twig file and the page.html twig file. And the reason that we're taking these two is because they're the prominent two that lay out our website. So we're going to open up a new tab here, and we're going to go into our particular theme. So if we come back out to htdocs, into our site, into themes, and then into fluffiness, we're going to drill down into our templates folder here, and we're going to copy both of these particular files, and we are going to paste them into this folder. So now over in our editor, we'll see here that we have the html.twig file and the page.twig file. And these are going to be the ones that primarily deal with laying out our website. So let's first take a look here at the html.html.twig file. Now, there's one very specific reason why I love to override this particular file. And the reason for that is that a lot of times third-party plugins will require you to insert some JavaScript right before the closing head tag in order to function. Apps like SumoMe will require you to do this, and email apps such as Drip will also require you to insert some sort of JavaScript code for tracking purposes right before the closing head tag. Now, this is really difficult to do if we don't have direct access to this particular location. Now, we could write some fancy JavaScript that's going to place that there, but that's after everything's loaded, and it's probably not the best way to do that. So by overriding this particular file, we can see here that we have access to that head element right here in this file, so that we can place a couple of lines here and paste in any kind of JavaScript that's required for us to use. And that's really primarily why I like to override this particular file. Other than that, there's really not a lot of purpose to it, mainly because it's just creating the head and the body section of our website. However, you can do some other pretty cool customizations in this file if it's required. But that's really all we're going to look at within this particular file, and that's just why I like to override it. More importantly here, we're going to take a look at the page.html.twig file. Now this file is really where the power of how our page is laid out comes from. So we can see in here that we are actually declaring different regions within this file. So we can see that we've created a header section, and within that we've placed the page.header. Now, where is it getting this information? It's getting this information from the info file. So we are actually calling this header element, and we're telling it to display right here within the page. Now, there's some things that we don't have within our info file, and those items are the main menus and the secondary menu regions and the breadcrumb regions. So all of this actually doesn't apply to us, so we would need to get rid of it. But what we do have is the content section, and we also have the sidebar first. Now, that's the only sidebar we have. So in our case, we would need to get rid of this sidebar second because that just doesn't exist in our theme. So we have the main regions that we've created. We have the header, the content, one sidebar, and we also have the footer, and that corresponds to the regions that we've created here. We could easily create a sidebar second by copying this line, pasting it down, and renaming it to sidebar second, and then we would have access to that in the layout. Now the nice thing here is that if you're using the CSS properties such as like display flex, we can make this sidebar end up on the right side if we really choose to do so. However, if we decide later on that we would have preferred to have it on the left side, it's as easy as coming in here and modifying this twig file and pasting this line prior to the content line. And that's really how simple it is to work with these twig files to get a basic layout of our website up and running. Now, like I said, you can override twig files provided by any module as long as we put them in our templates folder. That's going to override first, and then we'll get the display that we're actually desiring. Now we can see in here that this file is just basically simple HTML and these twig calls that make it easy to display the content regions we want to display when we want to display them. For example, if we have a sidebar first element, then go ahead and print the sidebar first. However, if we don't have that, then just don't bother even printing this content region at all. Now, there's a lot more that we can do within these twig files, such as looping, if statements, printing different dynamic content, and depending on the twig file that you override, there's going to be a lot more in-depth things that we can do with each of those files. But really, as long as you have a basic understanding of what twig files are and kind of how they work, they become very easy to read, and everything that you're doing within them will make sense. To sum up a little bit here, what we did in this section was we learned how to download and install themes from Drupal.org and get them up and running on our website and customizing new block regions. And then we really dove into building our own custom theme for Drupal 8. Now, this gave us the most control over how our content appears and where our block regions are and things like that.